On today's podcast, we're going to be talking about narcissism and codependency. If you've ever been in an unhealthy relationship, then I'm sure you've probably thought maybe you're with someone who's narcissistic or codependent. I've brought on Ross Rosenberg, a specialist on narcissism and codependency. It's fantastic to have you here. Welcome to the show, Ross.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad to be on it.
I want to get started by asking you about your book, The Human Magnet Syndrome. Why should someone read it?
Well, the book, its full title is Human Magnet Syndrome, Why We Love People Who Hurt Us. People should read it because they need to know why they feel stuck and perpetually powerless in relationships with narcissists. I believe that there's a lot of books on the market that will tell you what to do, but how can you actually solve a problem if you don't understand it? And in my book, I explain why so many people, so many codependents or people who feel powerless in relationships who are attracted to narcissists, why they always habitually, if not reflexively, fall in love with the same type of person over and over again, despite their promises to themselves. So my book will give you hope because it'll finally give you the explanation that will make sense to you, that will empower you to move forward and to make the changes.
So, one of the things that your work really brought to mind as a question for me and a lot of the listeners is, what exactly is a narcissist? I mean, I went out and asked the question. I posted on different social media sites, and a number of people thought that maybe they used to be narcissistic or that they are. And I think that there's a misunderstanding of what narcissism is. Could you clarify that for us a little bit more?
Oh, sure. In fact, one of the reasons I wrote my book is there's a misunderstanding of what both codependency and narcissism is. So let me explain first that narcissism can be understood on a continuum, that there are healthy narcissistic traits. So narcissists are people that need focus on themselves. They need to be right. They need to have people talk about them. They need compliments. They tend to be entitled. They tend to brag, and they don't like to be criticized. And the ones that are pathological have little empathy and very limited abilities to connect in a relationship that has mutuality or reciprocity. The narcissist, or what I call the pathological narcissist, involves themselves in a strictly one-sided relationship where everything needs to be geared for themselves. That is a pathological narcissist. Now, there are different degrees of narcissism. So on the other side of the continuum, and I have a theory in my book called a continuum of self that actually explains exactly what narcissism and codependency are, and they're set on a continuum, is someone who makes everyone else more important than themselves. They're powerless to get their needs met. They give in to other people's needs, and they are perpetually wanting validation by trying to love someone or give to them. And they have no power in a relationship. So if we look at these two, the codependent is someone who habitually are in relationships with narcissists because they are the weaker, the more submissive and acquiescent. And the narcissists are habitually in relationships with codependents because they are the controlling person, the needy person, the one that needs all of the power. You understand the human magnet syndrome, what draws these two opposite people together, almost in a perfect dysfunctional balance of a relationship, like two dance couples, the leader and the follower.
Why do you think these two are attracted to each other so much?
Well, the narcissist and the codependent are attracted to each other because they were raised in a certain way that created psychological harm. And if we look at, and I have this on my YouTube channel, and I do recommend that your listeners go to it. It's and you can just go on YouTube and just type in my name, Ross Rosenberg, and I explain that the origins of codependency and the origins of narcissism come from being raised by a narcissistic parent. If a narcissistic parents need their children to make them feel good about themselves. That's the narcissism. So the way the child adapts to the narcissism is going to determine what their relationship template is as an adult. For example, if a child finds that they can make the narcissistic parent happy by being the trophy child, the pretty child, the handsome child, the child that's agreeable, the child that can always make their parent happy, they learn early on that to be loved, you have to make someone happy.
Yeah, go ahead, continue.
So that's a relationship template that's going to manifest into codependency. But on the other side, if a child can't make the narcissist happy, can't figure out a way to make the narcissist feel good about the relationship, this child's going to grow up unattended, unloved, and in some cases neglected and abused. And then they develop a relationship template where the world is unsafe and the only person that's going to love you is yourself. And that later will manifest in pathological narcissism. So to the question, it comes from codependency and narcissism comes from being raised by a narcissist.
You know, as you're talking, I'm thinking of like a majority of relationships that I see. I mean, I'm kind of sad to say that out loud, but a lot of couples that I see have these dynamics that you're talking about. And as I was reading your book, I started to feel kind of like, whoa, you know, am I even displaying some of these behaviors? And it's very easy to feel like maybe you have this. I mean, narcissism is never considered a healthy thing. You know, you said that there's a spectrum, but I've never really thought about it as a spectrum. I've always thought basically if you're a narcissist, you're self-absorbed, you're not nice, and you're obsessed with yourself, and you don't really care about other people. And if you're codependent, you're unhealthy and you're powerless.
Right. But I created the continuum of self theory, and in order to help people understand that there is a range of potentials. So the most severe codependent is all the way on the end of one side of the continuum, and the most severe narcissist is all the way on one end of the continuum. One's all about their own needs, and one's all about self. But you could also be healthier. You can be like moderately consumed with your own needs, or you can be moderately consumed with other people's needs. The theory of the human magnet syndrome is that you match up with someone who fits you perfectly in an opposite way. So not everyone is pathologically narcissistic, and not everyone is pathologically codependent. We all fit on this continuum. Now, as important is it to understand this as a way to point someone's problems, it also points their strengths. Because as you get healthier in a relationship, and let's say you're a codependent and you're perfectly matched with a narcissist, as you get healthier, then the balance doesn't work anymore. And so there's not that balance. And so then either you have to go back on your codependency, or the narcissist has to change. And since narcissists don't like to change, that these relationships usually fall apart.
I'm pretty certain that I used to be in a relationship with a narcissist. Does that automatically make me codependent, or that I was codependent then?
No, not exactly. What makes you codependent? What would have made you codependent is if you're in a relationship with a narcissist and you did not try to stand up for yourself, you did not try to set boundaries, and you just gave up, or you kept believing that they'll get better. But the fact that you were in a relationship and you got out of it shows me that there's some level of mental health, perhaps great mental health. Now, if you told me you're in a relationship with a narcissist, then I would have to, and I wouldn't do this on radio.
Well, I hope she's not in a relationship with a narcissist.
So.
Yeah, well, but the point is, just the very fact that you're out of it tells me that you wanted more from it. And so if you read my book on the chapter of the continuum of self, you might have been, more on the codependent side, but realized you needed to be treated better. And of course, relationships don't last when you demand that and you have a narcissist as a partner.
One of the biggest questions that I've been asked by people in different conversations that I've had is, how do you get out of one of these relationships? They tend to be very addictive. One of the key signs to them is that one person just feels like this is the magical person. This is the answer. This is the end all, and if they can't survive in this relationship, their life is over. And you have this dynamic where both people just feel stuck to each other like drug addicts, and other people watching it have such a hard time. And I've been asked, how do you help someone get out of this relationship?
Well, it's interesting you said that, Luis, because in my second book, The Codependency Cure, Reversing the Human Magnet Syndrome, I actually am writing about how codependency manifests or feels like an addiction. And just like if you're an alcoholic, to consider quitting is overwhelming because it's more powerful than yourself. And that's why so many codependents cannot escape the relationship, because they don't have the internal strength or the external support to do it. So the answer to your question is psychotherapy with a specialist. And this is why I'm writing my second book, The Codependency Cure, because the first book, The Human Magnet Syndrome, talked about the problem and helped people understand in an intuitive, powerful way the problem. Now, to learn how to correct that problem, it requires psychotherapy, and it requires recovery. And there's no shortcut. There's no answer that I can give you that will let your listeners give your listeners enough information to make that leap. You have to be in a supportive therapeutic relationship that understands the depth of codependency, which often, if you remember, if we go back to my answer of why are these people the way they are, it comes from early childhood traumatic experiences with your own parent, which is why that therapy has to address and solve, if not heal, that traumatic childhood experience of being raised by a codependent. Otherwise, you keep perpetually finding the same partner over and over again.
One of the things that I do to find interviews and people to come on the show is I search through the internet. YouTube has become a really fantastic medium for me to discover nuggets. And you've been one of those people. Quick search on codependency in YouTube pretty much brings you. You pretty much just dominate that sphere of codependency and narcissism, which is fantastic. I mean, you have such great content. There's videos on YouTube that are well over an hour long on trainings. I mean, if someone wanted to really try to understand this, they would have to go to school for a long time. But if they wanted to just kind of get an overall view of it and get some insight and start asking some questions, they can go to YouTube and look you up. Why do you think your YouTube channel is so high in views and people they're watching?
Well, first of all, I should tell your listeners that my YouTube channel is a little less than 2 years old, and I have almost 1.2 million views and 10,000 subscribers. And I've had a lot of people in different media outlets contact me and say, so what did you do? Because I don't have great photography, great this or great that. And I told them content is people out in the world who are looking for answers can recognize someone who has something to offer. And yes, I'm in the business. I have a counseling center. I have a training company. I'm an author, and yes, it would be nice to have some money to retire. Don't get me wrong, but more than that, I want to leave a legacy behind, and I want to give people an opportunity to grow and change. And this is the young Ross Rosenberg of 1979, who said when he grows up he wants to be a therapist and he wants to change the world. Well, that was the idealism that kind of stays with me, is I really want to make a difference. And so YouTube serves a dual purpose. One is I get to reach an international audience and really help people out. And two, it's really good for business. I mean, it really gets my name out. And as long as I put out quality content it's original content, it's my own ideas, then people want to see it. And I've never been happier in my life. This is almost like a dream come true, because I'm just talking about what I know and I believe. I'm not out there getting pictures, movies, or videos of someone eating a pepper and then acting like a fool.
So here's something that really that question brings to mind is, do you think codependency and narcissism are more common nowadays? I mean, if there's more views, my theory on it is either you're kind of the guy who's doing it and really going out there and sharing the subject, and maybe it's just more common or more widely acknowledged now?
Okay, first of all, it's not more common. One of the things that I have great pride in is my book introduces the subject in a way that everyone gets. And the only person that doesn't get it and gets pissed off at my book are the narcissists. And then I'll tell you a story about that later, when a narcissist said he was a codependent, and et cetera, et cetera. But what I've done is I've explained it in a way that really kind of clicks. I learned this because until I wrote my book, I had a secret that I didn't want anyone to know. I had deep shame about the fact that I've been divorced twice, been married 3 times, because I felt so inadequate. I carried so much shame and loneliness about me as a therapist, making that mistake so many times, that I didn't tell anyone. Everyone knew, my friends, except my family, that I was divorced once. But when I wrote my book, I wanted my reader to know that this happens to everyone, this repeated pattern, and that you shouldn't be ashamed of it. You should just learn about it so you can change it. And I think that it resonates with the codependents out there, and it gives them hope, because a lot of codependents like myself, they just feel like they're bad people, or they're lonely people, or they're just flawed. And when someone like myself gives an explanation, the light bulb goes off and they feel inspired. And I'll tell you about the greatest feeling that I have is when I get thousands of letters of people saying that my videos or my book changed their lives, and there's no money that can make me feel that good. So I'm speaking universal truths in a way that people would understand, that I learned from my own therapy and my own journey of recovery.
How powerful, and that kind of makes me think about the journey that I've been on, and with dating a narcissist, and how I felt so messed up after that relationship, and I just felt so twisted and manipulated. And I'm wondering what you would recommend as a recovery process for people who have been in a relationship with a narcissist and don't really know which way is up and down after that experience, because it can be so manipulating.
Well, one of the things that I discovered, it's interesting, when I start to write another book, I'm thinking of new things to say and great ways to say it. And one day I came up with a sentence that explained my whole idea for the second book. Now, of course, I need 225 more pages. but the essence of codependency recovery is self-love. So here's my magical sentence. The antidote for codependency is self-love. So to answer your question is, what advice do I have for codependents out there that either are stuck in these relationships or are coming out of it and are kind of broken or kind of beaten up because of it, is to understand that at the core of your codependency is you, somewhere along the line, as I've said over and over again, mostly because of your childhood, you never really learned to love and value yourself. You never really were taught by the way your parents raised you to believe you're worthwhile, to be respected, loved, and cared. And because of that early childhood experience or trauma, you keep accepting that because your self-esteem is so embattled and beaten down. So what I say to these codependents who are in relationships or who have ended relationships, who are on the verge of repeating the pattern again, vis-a-vis the human magnet syndrome, is understand that you have to heal those wounds inside of you that cause you to feel not worthy of being loved, respected, and cared for. And that is the core of codependency recovery, is to solve and to not repair, that sounds too mechanical, to resolve those wounds that perpetuate your automatic, if not magnetic or reflexive reaction to a narcissist, and to accept their harm.
Beautiful. I love how it kind of boils down to that self-love piece.
Yes.
And I'm curious about if two codependents are attracted to each other ever, and what kind of relationship that creates.
It's funny you said that, because I just finished a session with one of my codependent clients, and I told her this joke that I'll tell you, and I got this joke from one of my trainings, and I've done my whole codependent narcissism or human magnet syndrome training throughout the United States, and actually planning to go to Netherlands with it soon. But so I say, we're going to break for lunch now, and imagine 3 of you guys who are codependent are going to ask for where do you want to go out for lunch? how long do you think that conversation is going to last? Well, that's that's a 15-minute discussion. Well, I don't care. Where do you want to go? Well, where do you want to go? Well, I don't care. And then all of a sudden, someone who doesn't have anyone to go out to lunch with because he's a narcissistic son of a gun comes up and says, hey, where are you guys going out to lunch? Takes over the conversation. And they say they don't care. And he picks, well, let's go for Indian food. And let's say these three codependents don't like Indian food, but they'll say sure, and they go out to lunch, and next thing you know, they're all unhappy but not saying anything. So the reason I tell you that is that you know what? I tell stories and I lost the question.
I was just asking about two codependents being in a relationship.
Yes. Okay, it doesn't work. According to the human magnet syndrome, you need opposites to attract. I chose the name human magnet syndrome because we think of magnets, the North Pole, or the negative magnetic pole, is always attracted to the South Pole, or this positive magnetic pole. And you could always see that opposite magnets attract each other, and similar poles repel each other. So if you've ever known someone who's gone on a date, say Match.com or whatever is the dating, and let's say both of them were equally gorgeous and attractive, but they said there's no chemistry. Well, that experience of no chemistry is often the result of the human magnet syndrome, that the two codependents are too much alike and they don't feel like there's any kind of connection. But if you put a codependent on a date with a narcissist, oh my God, there is electricity, there's magnetism, there's charm. All of a sudden, that narcissist feels charming and exciting and bold to the codependent. And that narcissist feels that codependent is sweet and caring and patient. And really, the whole time, the narcissist talked during the date while the codependent listened. So the point is, if two codependents meet, there's no chemistry because they don't know what to do. They like to help and listen. So or if two narcissists meet, they tend to not like each other and they keep interrupting each other. So the human magnet syndrome says that relationships unconsciously move towards an opposite attraction. So it doesn't quite work out that well with two codependents. Have any of you guys ever been on a date with someone who you thought on paper was perfect, but you didn't feel any chemistry?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that means wherever you are in the continuum, they were probably more similar to you than opposite. And that's unconscious. It's like your mind, part of your psyche knows that it just doesn't feel right.
Yeah, I mean, I love myself, but I definitely don't want to be on a date with myself. Contrast is nice. I know you've done some work with Dr. Harville Hendricks too, right?
Yes, actually, I was really fortunate to have him endorse my book. And 6 months ago, there was a panel discussion I was invited to with him, 3 other relationship experts, and his wife, and we got to do a series of videotaped panel discussions, which are available on my YouTube channel. He is brilliant. He is a master of relationship theory, and probably is one of the more influential people in my life and the understanding of the theories that culminated in writing my book.
Yeah, we had the pleasure of meeting him this summer, and he's been on the podcast, which I think that your work with his work is a really full spectrum experience for navigating relationships.
Well, thank you. That's quite a compliment. I appreciate that.
I'm wondering, since we live in this day and age of these quizzes online, and how do you get diagnosed as something, or how do you figure it out? So do you have any resources for figuring out if you're dating a narcissist, if you're a narcissist, or if you're a codependent?
Okay, well, first of all, I have to tell you my opinions. I have a... okay, let me be nice.
It's okay. You can be blunt. Yeah. Online quizzes are probably not that great.
Well, I think they're very misleading, and I think the whole world on the internet is ADD. Everyone wants, a complicated subject reduced to like a 30-second soundbite, and those quizzes I see are more opportunities for the writers to get to market themselves because they lack substance. And I've seen these great titles and these empty quizzes with these So there's no real quick way to understand something complicated, but that's why I created my YouTube channel. So skip the quizzes, either buy my book, and if $18 is too much for you, go online and go to YouTube and look at my videos. But if you really want to get a bird's eye view into my newest work, go to humanmagnetsyndrome.com, where you can buy the book, but you could also buy the full 6-hour seminar that has all of my newer ideas. But the point is, if you want a quick bit of information, check out a few of my videos. But really, there's no way to solve a complicated problem quickly. And by listening to my videos or reading my book, I promise you, you're going to walk away with an understanding of if you're codependent or not. But I do have a disclaimer. The videos are just excerpts of all my work. The book itself is a condensed version of everything put together. So it's out there, but I don't have any quick 15-step processes.
And tell the audience one more time where we can watch the videos and where we can get your book.
To find my book and the seminar trainings, you go to humanmagnetsyndrome.com. To see my videos on YouTube, just go to YouTube and type in my name, Ross Rosenberg, and my last name is spelled Rosenberg. Or type codependency.
Say that last part again.
Or just type in codependency, because as you said, my name pops up a lot.
So, Ross, I also know that you do a lot of trainings. I want people to go on that website if they're interested in getting some trainings around mediation, a deeper insight into codependency, narcissism. One of my last questions for you, because I feel like it's so important anytime I get a professional on the show, is there's a lot of examples and a lot of work telling us what unhealthy relationships look like, how to identify them, but how do we know if we're in a healthy relationship?
I explained this in the Human Magnet Syndrome. Healthy relationships are mutual and reciprocal. Even with the problems you experience, because I think a normal relationship has problems, but healthy relationship resolves them and you learn from them. It's when both people can demonstrate and show their love, care, and respect for the other one in a way that the other one feels it. Even with mistakes or some bad behavior, the person that tries to build up their lover tries to become better because of the relationship. That's a healthy relationship, is to be able to solve the problems, to learn from them, and to always feel loved, respected, and cared for.
That's wonderful. And, again, this isn't like a simple answer, because it's not that we're going to be able to give a 30-second answer of this is what love is like. Love is one of the most commonly written about subjects because as humans, we need it and we thrive on it. It's our gasoline. It's our sunshine. And I really strongly believe in people learning how to identify unhealthy relationships and routines that they have, because we all have our certain, like grooves in a disc. We all have those, and once we identify them, it's just so much easier to change. It's been really great to have you on the show today. Kamala and I really enjoyed talking to you.
Absolutely, and you really helped put a lot of things into light about my past relationships, and also to look at how I feel like I'm in a healthy relationship now, and I loved how you were able to just distill a lot of it down to recovering from being with a narcissist and, really getting to that essence of self-love again. You had some really incredible points today.
Well, Kamala and Luis, you guys were great interviews. Love your show, and I appreciate the invitation.
Wow, that was a fantastic interview with Ross Rosenberg. I hope that you learned a lot about healthy and unhealthy relationships and how to navigate them. If you're needing more support, remember at lastingloveconnection.com, we have you. We've got articles, videos, and of course the podcast. Along with that, if you're needing some coaching and that extra special attention, please go to lastingloveconnection.com/services. I'm a coach and I want to help you. Kamala and I are here for you, and that's why we do this.